I was 42 and had been driving long-haul routes for over a decade when this happened just outside of Barstow, California. It was one of those overnight runs through the desert where everything feels endless. The kind of drive where you can go 30 minutes without seeing another car, and your headlights feel like they're barely cutting through the dark. Around 2 a.m., I noticed a set of headlights behind me. That wasn't unusual at first, but what caught my attention was how long they stayed there. Most cars either pass you or fall behind eventually. This one didn't. It kept the exact same distance behind me for miles. I sped up a little. It sped up too. I slowed down. It slowed down. It never tried to pass. After about 15 minutes of this, I started to feel uneasy. There's something about being followed in the middle of nowhere that just doesn't sit right. I checked my mirrors again, try and get a better look. That's when I realized something was off. The headlights looked too high, not like a normal car, not even like another truck. Just two lights, sitting higher than they should have been, but with no visible shape behind them. No outline, no cab, no trailer, just lights. I tried convincing myself it was just the angle or distance, but the longer I looked, the worse it felt. Eventually, I saw a rest stop coming up and decided to pull in. As I slowed down and turned off, I kept watching the lights in my mirror. They didn't follow. They didn't pass. They just stopped right there on the road. I parked, got out, and walked a few steps toward the entrance. When I looked back at the highway, the lights were gone. No fading away. No movement. Just gone. I didn't sleep that night. I was 36 when I took a delivery route through rural Pennsylvania, just outside a town called Clearfield. It was late fall, and the roads were lined with trees that felt like they closed in tighter the deeper you drove. I had just finished a delivery and was heading to the nearest truck stop, maybe another 25 minutes out, when this happened. It was already late, sometime after midnight, and there wasn't a single other car on the road. No headlights in front of me, none behind me. Just my truck, the sound of the engine, and those long, dark stretches of road that all started to look the same after a while. I remember thinking how quiet it felt. Not peaceful, just quiet in a way that makes you more aware of everything. Every small movement, every shadow, every little thing stands out more than it should. I had just come around a bend when I saw it. A pickup truck parked on the side of the road. Its headlights were off, which immediately stood out to me. Usually, if someone pulls over at night, they'll at least leave their hazards on or something. But this truck was just sitting there in complete darkness. As I got closer, I noticed the driver's door was open, not wide open, just enough that it wasn't shut all the way. That alone made me slow down. I've seen broken down vehicles before, but something about the way it was sitting there didn't feel right. It didn't look like someone had just pulled over for a quick stop. It looked abandoned, but at the same time, not quite. As I got closer, my headlights hit the inside of the cab, and that's when I saw him. There was someone sitting in the driver's seat, a man probably around my age. He was just sitting there, completely still, hands resting near the wheel, head slightly turned. At first, I thought maybe he was on his phone or just staring out the window, but the longer I looked, the more something felt off about it. I passed him slowly, still watching, trying to figure out what I was looking at. He didn't react at all. No movement, no turning his head, nothing. I drove maybe another 20 or 30 feet before I stopped. I don't usually pull over for stuff like that, especially in the middle of nowhere, but something about it stuck with me. Maybe he needed help. Maybe his truck broke down. Maybe he was hurt. I sat there for a second, debating whether I should just keep going, but the thought of leaving someone out there like that didn't sit right either. So I put the truck in park, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped out. The air was colder than I expected. That late fall kind of cold where it cuts through your clothes just enough to make you uncomfortable. It was completely silent out there. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just that empty road and the trees on both sides. I started walking back toward the pickup, calling out as I got closer. I asked if he was okay, if he needed help. No response. I slowed down as I got within about 10 feet of the driver's side door. That's when I really started to notice it. He hadn't moved at all, not even a twitch. No shift in posture, no reaction to my voice. Just completely still. I called out again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. Something about that made me stop where I was. I didn't get any closer than that. I just stood there, shining my flashlight toward the cab, trying to get a better look at him. His head was turned slightly toward the passenger seat. Not toward me, not toward the road, but toward the empty seat next to him, like he had been looking at something, or someone. I took another step forward, just enough to see inside more clearly. The passenger seat was empty, no one there, no movement, nothing out of place. But the way he was positioned, it didn't look like he had just been sitting there normally. It looked like he had been focused on something, watching it closely. I remember trying to make sense of it. Maybe he fell asleep, maybe he passed out, maybe he was just ignoring me. But even then, something didn't add up. I couldn't see his chest moving. Maybe it was just the angle or the lighting from my flashlight. I told myself that had to be it. But there was still something about the way he was sitting there that didn't feel right. Too still, way too still. I thought about getting closer, maybe reaching out, checking on him directly. But something in the back of my mind kept telling me not to. I don't know why. I can't explain it. Just one of those instincts you get sometimes where something feels off and you don't question it. You just listen. So I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off him, and walked back to my truck. The entire time, I kept expecting him to move, even just slightly, turn his head, shift in his seat, anything. But he didn't. I got back into my truck and locked the door. I sat there for a second, just staring ahead, trying to calm myself down. I told myself I was overthinking it, that there was a logical explanation. There had to be. After a few seconds, I put the truck back in drive and started moving again. As I passed the pickup for the second time, I looked over one more time. He was still there, same position, same stillness. I kept driving, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about the whole situation just stuck with me in a way I couldn't shake. I checked my mirrors out of habit. That's when I saw it. The pickup was still there in the distance behind me, but the driver's door was closed. I didn't see it move. I didn't hear it shut. I didn't see him reach for it. It was just closed. I stared at it in the mirror for a few seconds, trying to convince myself I must have remembered it wrong. Maybe it wasn't open as much as I thought. Maybe it had been partially closed already. But I knew what I saw when I drove up the first time. I knew it wasn't shut. I didn't slow down. I didn't turn around. I just kept driving. And the longer I drove, the more I started to feel like I shouldn't have stopped at all. I didn't see another vehicle for the rest of that drive. Not until I reached the truck stop. Even now, I still think about that guy sometimes. About how still he was. About the way he was looking at that empty seat. And I still can't explain how that door closed. I was 50, running a route through Amarillo, Texas, when I decided to stop at a small roadside gas station just after midnight. It wasn't one of the big truck stops you usually see along the highway. No bright lights, no rows of trucks, no people moving around. Just a single building sitting off the road with two old pumps out front and a flickering sign that looked like it had been there for decades. I almost didn't stop. Something about it fell off even from the road. But I'd been driving for hours, and I needed to stretch my legs and grab something to drink. It was either that or keep going another 40 minutes to the next real stop. So I pulled in. As I rolled closer, my headlights swept across the front of the building. The paint looked faded, almost gray instead of whatever color it used to be. One of the pumps had a plastic bag tied over the handle, and the other looked like it barely worked. The place didn't look abandoned exactly, but it definitely didn't look active either. I parked near the entrance and shut off the engine. The silence hit me immediately. No cars passing, no wind, nothing. Just that quiet you only get in the middle of nowhere late at night. I sat there for a second, debating whether I should even get out, but I told myself I was overthinking it. It was just an old gas station. Nothing unusual about that. So I grabbed my wallet, stepped out, and headed inside. The door opened with a soft creak, and as soon as I walked in, I noticed the lighting. It was on but dim, not like normal indoor lighting. It felt like half the bulbs were either burnt out or not getting enough power. The whole place had this dull, yellowish tone to it that made everything look slightly off. The shelves were stocked with snacks, drinks, basic stuff you'd expect, but nothing looked quite right. Some items were pushed too far forward, others too far back. It wasn't messy, just uneven, like someone had stocked it quickly and didn't really care how it looked. I walked up toward the counter and waited for a second. No one there. No sound of movement. No voice from the back. Nothing. I called out once, just a simple hello. It echoed slightly through the store, which made it feel even emptier. No response. I waited a few seconds, then called out again, a little louder this time. Still nothing. At that point, I figured the attendant might be in the back room. Maybe they stepped away for a minute. It happens. I took a couple more steps forward, closer to the counter, and leaned slightly to see if I could spot anyone behind it. That's when I heard it. A faint tapping sound. It wasn't loud, just quiet enough that I almost didn't notice it at first. Slow, uneven tapping. Not rhythmic, not consistent. Just random taps. Like something lightly hitting against the surface every few seconds. I froze for a moment, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Then I realized it was coming from behind the counter. There was a small hallway back there, partially visible from where I was standing. The tapping was coming from somewhere down that hallway, deeper in the building. I stood there for a few seconds, listening. Tap, pause, tap, tap. Longer pause, then another single tap. It didn't sound mechanical. It didn't sound like a machine or something running in the background. It sounded intentional, but not in a normal way. I called out again, this time toward the hallway, asked if someone was back there. No response. The tapping didn't change. It just kept going at that same slow, uneven pace. I remember thinking I should go check. That would have been the normal thing to do. Walk back there, see if someone needed help or if something was wrong. But I didn't move. Something about it didn't feel right. I can't really explain it better than that. There was just this feeling that if I walked down that hallway, I wouldn't like what I found. And not in a normal, this is weird kind of way. It felt deeper than that, like a warning you don't question. So instead of going toward it, I took a step back. The tapping kept going. I took another step back, then another, slowly moving away from the counter. My eyes stayed locked on that hallway the entire time, waiting for something to come out of it. Nothing did. Just that sound. Top, pessa, top. By the time I reached the front of the store again, my heart was beating a little faster than it should have been. I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was probably just something falling in the back room. Maybe a loose pipe, maybe something settling. There had to be a logical explanation. But even thinking that, I didn't turn around. I reached the door, grabbed the handle, and right as I was about to open it, the tapping stopped. Completely. No final tap, no fading out. Just silence. I paused for a second, hands still on the door, listening. Nothing. The silence felt heavier than before, like the sound had been filling the space, and now that it was gone, everything felt wrong. I didn't look back. I opened the door and stepped outside. The cold air hit me again, and for a second, I just stood there trying to shake off that feeling. I told myself I should just leave, get back in the truck, and go. As I walked back toward my truck, I glanced up at the front window of the store. That's when I saw it. There was someone standing inside now, behind the counter. I stopped walking. They weren't there before. I knew they weren't. I had been looking right at that counter the entire time I was inside. There was no one there, but now there was, just standing there. I couldn't make out many details. The lighting inside was too dim, and the reflection on the glass didn't help, but I could clearly see the outline of a person, standing upright, facing directly toward the door, toward me. They weren't moving, not even slightly. I didn't see them walk out from the hallway. I didn't hear any footsteps. I didn't hear the door behind me open. They were just there. For a second, I thought maybe they had been there the whole time, and I just somehow didn't notice. But that didn't make sense. I had been staring right at that spot. I stood there for maybe 2 seconds, trying to process it. Then I got into my truck. I locked the door immediately. started the engine, and pulled away without looking back toward the building. As I drove past the front of the store, I couldn't help it. I looked one more time. The figure was still there, same position, still facing forward, still not moving. I pulled onto the road and started driving, trying to put distance between me and that place as quickly as possible. After a few seconds, I checked my side mirror. The gas station was already getting smaller behind me. The lights inside looked dimmer than before. Or maybe it was just the distance. I looked again just to be sure. The inside of the store was empty. No one behind the counter. No movement. Nothing. I kept driving. I didn't stop again until I reached a proper truck stop nearly an hour later. Even now, I still think about that place sometimes. About the tapping. About that hallway. And about how someone was standing behind that counter without ever walking out. I was 44 when I was driving through Wyoming, not too far from a small town called Rawlins. It was one of the loneliest stretches of road I've ever been on. Nothing but open land and wind for miles. The kind of place where your headlights feel like they barely reach anything, and the darkness just swallows everything else. I had been driving for hours at that point, just keeping a steady pace, watching the road and listening to the same low hum of the engine that eventually just fades into the background. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise coming from the back of my trailer. At first, I didn't think much of it. Cargo shifts sometimes, especially on long drives. It's normal to hear the occasional bump or movement back there. I figured maybe I hit a small dip in the road or something settled differently. But then it happened again. A distinct thud. Not loud, but clear. Like something hitting the inside wall. That made me pay attention. I checked my mirrors immediately, watching the trailer as best as I could. Everything looked normal. No swaying, no sign that anything had come loose. I kept driving, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But then a few minutes later, I heard it again. Another thud. This one felt different. Not like something falling or sliding, more like something making contact and then stopping. I turned the radio off after that. I wanted to hear clearly. For a while, there was nothing, just the road, the wind, and the sound of the tires. I almost started to relax again. Then it came back, a heavier thud this time, followed by what sounded like a slight shift, like something adjusting its position after hitting the wall. That was enough for me. I slowed down and pulled over onto the shoulder. There wasn't much space, just enough to get the truck off the road safely. I turned on my hazards and sat there for a second, just listening. Nothing. Complete silence. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The wind hit me immediately. Wyoming wind has a way of cutting through everything, and out there in the middle of the night, it felt even stronger. The road behind me stretched into darkness, and ahead of me it was the same. No headlights, no signs of anyone else anywhere nearby. As I walked back toward the trailer, I started to feel it. That same quiet, heavy feeling you get when something isn't right. It's hard to explain unless you felt it before. Nothing you can point to directly, just a sense that something is off. I reached the back doors and paused for a second, listening. Nothing from inside. No movement, no sound. Just the wind outside. I unlocked the doors and opened one of them slowly. The hinges creaked slightly, louder than I expected in the silence. I shined my flashlight inside. Everything looked exactly how I left it. Boxes stacked neatly, straps tight, nothing leaning or out of place. It all looked secure, normal. I stood there for a minute, scanning the interior with the light, waiting to see something shift or move. Nothing did. I stepped a little closer, raising the light higher to see deeper inside. Still nothing. No signs that anything had fallen or come loose. I told myself that had to be it. Maybe I misheard something. Maybe it was just the road playing tricks on me. I was about to close the door when I heard it again. This time, it didn't sound like it came from near the front. It sounded deeper inside the trailer, farther back, behind the stacks of cargo. It wasn't as loud as before, but it was clear. A dull, controlled thud, like something making contact and then stopping. I froze. I didn't move for a few seconds. I just listened, The wind outside seemed quieter all of a sudden, or maybe I was just focused on what was inside. I stepped up into the trailer slowly, 1 foot at a time, keeping the flashlight pointed forward. The beam moved across the boxes, casting long shadows behind them. I scanned from left to right, then toward the back again. Nothing moved. Nothing fell. Everything stayed exactly where it was. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. That sense that I wasn't alone in there. I took another step forward, just enough to get a better angle past the first row of boxes. The shadows shifted slightly as I moved the light, but nothing else changed. No sound, no movement. I waited, holding my breath without realizing it, just listening for anything. Seconds passed, maybe longer. Eventually, I stepped back. Something in my head told me I didn't need to go any further. I backed out of the trailer slowly, never turning my back on the inside, and stepped down onto the road again. I reached for the door and started to close it. Just before it shut, I paused one last time and looked inside. Everything looked exactly the same. Still, quiet, empty. I closed the door and secured it. As I locked it, I heard one final sound. A single, soft knock from the inside. I didn't open it again. I drove the rest of the night without stopping. And when I finally reached my destination, I made sure someone else was there before I opened that trailer.